Hey everyone, Dan Vuksanovich here at whyisuckatguitar.com. Today's lesson is the second in a series entitled I Suck at Guitar because my picking hand is a tense, inaccurate mess. In part one of this series, we examined how our muscles can help us and hinder us while picking, and we talked about picking single notes, alternate picking, and crossing strings. In this lesson, we're going to apply those concepts to a piece of music. Now, for those of you that have watched the similar series on the fretting hand, this is going to be almost the same, except we're going to look at the picking hand half of the equation this time. We're going to use the exact same excerpt from Bach's Third Cello Suite, and I was in pretty much the same situation with my picking hand as I was with my fretting hand when I first started playing this piece. My picking hand was incredibly tense and inaccurate, but with slow and careful practice and with studying the concepts and applying the concepts that we talked about in part one of the series, here's what it sounds like now. So the process for applying these concepts is going to look very similar to what we did with the fretting hand in the fretting hand series of lessons. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this excerpt and we're going to split it into smaller chunks. So for those of you who didn't watch the series on the fretting hand yet, here are the chunks. First there's this, and then this, and then this, and then this, this, and then this. Now for each of these chunks, I'm going to take my fretting hand out of the equation. So I'm going to take it and I'm just going to dampen the strings. I'm not going to fret them, I'm just going to dampen them. And then I'm going to work on my picking hand by itself. So the first chunk of this goes like this, picking hand alone. So I'm using strict alternate picking, and I want to make sure that I have my downstrokes on the beats. So within the framework of this piece, that means that this starts with an upstroke. So I've got my upstroke on the B string. So that's 3 strokes on the B string, 1 stroke on the E string, 3 more strokes on the B string, and then alternating between the G string and the B string. So I've got a lot of stuff going on in here. I've got alternate picking on an individual string. I've got inside picking, which is crossing strings on the inside of those 2 strings. So in other words, upstrokes on the B string and downstrokes on the E string, like this. And then I've got outside picking on the B string and the G string, like this. Upstrokes on the B string, downstrokes on the G string. So I have the opportunity to figure out, because I'm playing my picking hand by itself, where there might be any hitches, where I'm having problems, where am I missing, where am I pausing too long, where's there tension building up, and really focus in on those areas. And for me, string crossing with inside picking has always been harder than outside picking. So I'm always going after the inside picking. So it's, I might sit for a couple minutes and just go after the inside picking from the B string to the E string. And if I'm having problems with this, I want to make sure that I'm applying all the concepts from the first lesson in the series. So am I preparing my strokes? Remember, preparation is turning each picking stroke into 2 movements, one to place the pick, and the second movement to actually pick the string. So place, release, place, release, place, release, place, release. Am I using large motions? Remember, large motions keep us from tensing up. So am I following through? Am I finishing one motion before starting the next? Now remember, we want to keep our muscles from fighting against each other. So am I finishing the follow-through of my downstroke before I start moving to the upstroke? And have I finished with my upstroke before I start moving to the downstroke? So all of those things I want to keep in mind as I work on those problem areas. Now, as I'm working on that problem area with my picking hand by itself, it's going to start feeling better. And when it does, I can reintroduce my fretting hand potentially. So feels pretty good. And then if there are problems, I can drop my fretting hand back out, or maybe if I think that the problems are actually in my fretting hand now and not in my picking hand, maybe I flip things around and work on my fretting hand alone for a while. That's all going to be up to you, and your experiences as you do this are going to drive where you go when it comes to fretting hand alone, picking hand alone. But once I go through all the chunks and I hone in on all the problem areas and get them worked out, then I can put everything back together and run the whole thing. So there you have it. So now that it's easy, now that we have the piece under our fingers, fretting and picking hand, now we can start making music. Now that my hands aren't about to fall off and I'm not spending all my time worried about whether I'm going to miss notes, I can focus on things like rhythm, accentuating the pulse that we can use to drive the music forward, tempo, at what tempo does this piece make the most sense, and phrasing, where are the beginnings and the ends of the musical ideas. How can I best explain those phrases musically to listeners? All this stuff is the same as what we talked about in part 3 of the fretting hand lesson, but it still applies. Once we have a piece under our fingers, there's still the next steps to go, which are, how can I make this sound the way that I want it to sound? So here's some things that you can do. Once again, these are the same as in part 3 of the series on the fretting hand. Take a section of a piece of music that you're playing that's fairly easy for you and make it completely effortless. That means that you never, ever, ever miss. You can hit it every single time perfectly. Take a section of a piece of music that you're playing and try and get it from difficult to a little less difficult, and then bit by bit move a difficult passage all the way to easy and then effortless. It'll take some time, but if you select a passage that's small enough, you should be able to do it. Apply these concepts to a piece of music that you've been working on for quite a while now. This is a great way to start examining your bad habits and starting to undo them using the concepts that you've learned in these lessons. Take the concepts and apply them to a brand new piece of music that you've never played before. This is a great way to see how far you've come by starting a new piece of music without all the bad habit muscle memory that might be associated with a piece of music that you're already playing. In each case, you're going to get something different out of it, so try them all. Your homework for this lesson is to take a piece of music and apply some of the picking hand concepts that we've been working on. Once the piece starts to get easier, your brain's going to have a lot of extra available bandwidth to focus on making music, those things we talked about earlier, things like rhythm and tempo and phrasing. So in conclusion, I'll say the same thing that I said at the end of the third part of the fretting hand series. Never ever lose sight of the fact that the ultimate goal is making music. Working on improving your picking hand is a means to an end, but the ultimate goal is to make beautiful music with the technique that we now have. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time at whyisuckatguitar.com.